I wanted to talk today about a very short, very simple koan. This is case 141 in Dogen's collection. It goes like this. One day, the world-honored one, that's the Buddha, ascended the teaching seat and the assembly came together. Mahākāśyapa struck the mallet and announced, "The world-honored one has just expounded the Dharma." The world-honored one descended from the teaching seat. That's it. So the Buddha goes to the teaching seat, which is just like this seat. Or maybe it's on a mountainside. And he arranges himself. And now he's sitting there and everybody's ready. And as soon as it happens, Mahākāśyapa strikes a mallet. This carries forward into Zen. We have a mallet, it's called tsuichin. It marks these moments that matter. It's used in big ceremonies. It's used in meals as a way of saying, now. So Mahākāśyapa strikes the mallet and he says, the Buddha has expounded the Dharma. And then the Buddha gets down from the seat. That's it. There are a lot of versions of this story, similar ones, where the teacher is invited to teach and then just kind of presents himself or presents herself, doesn't really say anything, just shows up. And then either because an attendant says it or because the teacher says it, the message is, yeah, I did my job. You asked me to teach, I taught. And when I first encountered these types of stories, especially one like this where it's not just some person in the Zen literature, it's the Buddha. I would read this moment as having a particular kind of juice, right? That there was something about the presence of the Buddha. There was something about what he did that was so authentic or so charged that he could assume the seat in such a way that he was saying something important. That it's almost magic. And then couple that here with Mahākāśyapa saying, hey, it just happened, which implies that he knows that the people there didn't know that this happened, that they missed it, that they missed something important. This particular moment has carried forward in lots of different ways, in different traditions. I think I've mentioned this before, but in the Korean Son tradition, there's a kind of gesture that a teacher makes. The teacher assumes the seat just like this, and then holds out a staff and just waits. And the message is, I'm doing it. Are you meeting this? Are you here for this? And then there's this moment almost of, where the teacher says, okay, and puts the staff down and starts talking. As if to say, if you can't understand it that way, let's try it another way. So one way to read this koan is that there's something special about what the Buddha is doing, or there's something special about the Buddha. Another way to read this koan is as a reminder that the Dharma is always being expounded. That it doesn't need words. And so we go back to Bodhidharma saying that this is a transmission beyond words and letters. That it's something else. But then that can still have this feeling that if it's not about words and letters, maybe it's about something else. That maybe there's something, again, something kind of electrical happening in that moment, and that we have to be there for it. That can kind of put us on the edges of our seats. We start looking for something. We say at the beginning, before I talk, before anyone talks, we say the unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth. And because we do this, when we do this, which is just before someone starts talking, it sounds like a little bit of a pep talk, right? We're saying, hey, something's about to happen, and this thing matters. The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma, we say, is rarely met with, as if to say, this is the opportunity, right? This is a big deal. But that isn't really what we're saying. If we were saying that, it would be antithetical to everything else we say in this tradition. It isn't that the unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely met with in the sense of it's rare. It's not rare. There's nothing but the unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma. We're told that over and over and over again. And so met with doesn't mean the problem is out there. The problem is that we don't notice it. The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely noticed. It's rarely acknowledged. It's rarely felt. And so we can go 100,000 million kalpas and never realize what this moment is. Not this moment when someone's about to speak, but this moment. And then we have this awkward phrasing that says, now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. But it's really, we can see and hear it now. We can accept and maintain it now. And now, and now, and now. In every now. And then this great line at the end, may we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth, which sounds, if we're in this other mindset, like we're going to unpack something, right? We're going to hear it, we're going to see it, we're going to accept it, we're going to maintain it, and then we're going to lay it out and make sense of it. And yet we use this great verb, unfold. But when we unfold something, we reveal what it is. If I unfold this robe, you realize, oh, it's a robe. But until I do, you don't know. It could be a blanket. It could be a sheet. We don't know what this is. But if I open it up, you say, oh, it was that. It was that all along. I'm aware, and I think this is part of why a koan like this speaks to me. I'm aware after about 20 years of doing this that I am in a very privileged position, but also a very tricky one. That I sit here, I take this seat, and when I do, I know that I have the power to draw your attention to the Dharma. I have the good haircut, I have the robes, and it's only natural that when I sit here and I say, look at me, that everyone looks at me. And then I start talking about the Dharma, and it feels like, oh, we're doing the Dharma. This is happening. And what an incredible position to be in, to be able to pull everyone's attention toward that. And I'm equally aware that by doing that, by saying, look over here, it's the Dharma, I am probably also distracting you from it in every other moment. Because when you wake up in the morning and you look at your flashing alarm clock, it doesn't have this haircut, and it isn't wearing the robe, and it doesn't look like the Dharma, and it doesn't sound like the Dharma. And we might think, well, this isn't it. This is an ordinary moment. But maybe later today or maybe later this week, I'll be able to go find the extraordinary moment, and I'll reconnect with that thing that matters so much to me. When I read this story and stories like it, it's very affirming because it tells me that everyone has struggled with this from the beginning. That from the time of the Buddha on, there has always been this question. How do I call attention to the Dharma without telling the wrong story about where it is? So we have these moments where the teacher pulls the rug out just a little bit. You're expecting something and it doesn't come, and then you're told, oh no, it did. It was there. So in one way, that's what this koan is about. But I want to add a third part, which is that this is about form. The Buddha, you can imagine him. Maybe this is Vulture Peak. He walks from wherever he is and he goes to the seat, to a particular seat that everyone understands is the teaching seat. And everyone is watching him do it. Everyone is anticipating it. Everybody loves this part. And he's wearing his robes. And he has his presence about him. And he goes to the seat and he sits down, he prepares himself. in the way that he always would. And then Mahākāśyapa hits the mallet that says now. And he says, now. He says, this just happened. And then the Buddha gets down and he walks back to where he started. It's a performance. It's an acknowledgement that even as we're saying that this is always present, that this is always everything, that we also need to punctuate it. We punctuate it with a bow. We punctuate it with a bell. We come to Zazen and we imagine that Zazen begins with 3 bells and it ends with 1 bell. When in fact, Zazen is like this slow-moving train, and we just get on it at the 3 bell, and we get off it when the last bell rings. But it isn't as if Zazen wasn't there, and then suddenly it was there when we showed up. We show up to it. Part of what I love about this story, about this very, very short story, is that to me it isn't scolding, though it's a little bit cheeky. It isn't scolding everyone for not seeing it everywhere all the time. It's actually doing a demonstration of how we can notice it now. By bringing something to it. And so we bow, so we ring a bell, so we stand up a little bit straighter. And every time we do it, we're showing up to the thing that's already there. And it makes sense that we don't see it. Because it's us. We can look for it out there. We can listen for it out there. That attention brings us into the moment just a little bit more. It brings us into curiosity a little bit more. But there's no amount of looking, there's no amount of listening that makes it suddenly appear in a way that it hasn't already appeared. Because the thing that you're looking for, the thing that you're hoping will happen when the Buddha sits down and speaks, the thing that you're hoping will happen when you sit in Zazen is the thing that's happening in front of you in this moment. Right now. Always. Even when you're asleep. There is no moment, no place, no situation from which the Dharma is absent, or where the Dharma is not complete, or where the Dharma is obscured. Not one. So we trick ourselves. Not into seeing it or hearing it, but into kind of stepping into who we actually are. Stepping into what this actually is for a moment, or for the time between 2 bells. It's a weird dance. And if we look at it from one side, it can look as if we're getting it wrong. But from the other side, how could we? And that's where I'll stop.